I will show you today how to make a rose cane. I did not invent it. It's been online for a while and it's not hard to figure out how to make it. So what you need is white and a rose color. I'm using here souffle glue and cherry pie. You can use pretty much any kind of rose color. Just be careful that if you go with too light of a color, that's not going to look good. So, for example, instead of like sunshine yellow in Premo, use cadmium yellow. Or try to make it more peachy. For example, canary in souffle is a little bit too light, so you might want to make it more peachy. So let me get my Skinner blend. As you can see, I want them equal. I don't want a lot of pure white. So here I have it, and I like to roll it for the final phase because I think that the rolling is keeps the gradient more refined. And of course, I will get this through the pasta machine first on the thickest, and then I will slowly get it thinner and thinner until I get on the thinnest. And then again, you know that I like to have my gradient very refined, so I will be cutting the resulting strip in two lengthwise, and then I will stack those halves and I will run it through the pasta machine again, even if here I don't know what happened with my camera, but it's going to get fine in a second. I'm trying to make it refocus. Anyway, but make sure that those two pieces are well stuck together because otherwise they will separate in the pasta machine. So I go ahead and have this huge strip that I am going to fan, and I'm not going to keep you watching while I'm fanning because I like a very tight fan. So you get the block of the Skinner blend. Now you need to flatten it until you get the height as tall as the width. And then slowly you start transforming it into a cylinder, but you don't want those sides to get smushed together. So see, you kind of go on the opposite corners and you press, and that way you'll have a very nice gradient cylinder without lines and without the top and the bottom getting squished together. Now remember, the number on this cane is 5, even if initially you cut one piece, the big piece in two, and then half of it you cut it in 2/3 and 1/3, but it's 5. Okay, so I'm going to reduce this until I get to 5 inches, and then I will cut it in half. And I will put the one of the halves, that's 2.5 inches, aside, and then the other half I will reduce it again until I get about 3 inches, and then I will just keep reducing until I'm able to do 2/3 and 1/3. As you can see, I keep reducing it, and I will cut it in one 2-inch piece and another 1-inch piece. Then each of those pieces I will reduce them to 5 inches, so I can cut them into 5 1-inch pieces. And yeah, initially I went for this one for 4. I don't know, I guess I did not have enough coffee when I made this tutorial. The good part about polymer clay is that you can just mush it together and nothing bad will happen. So yeah, I'm getting back to 5. And that's what happens when I make tutorials so early in the morning. Um, so yeah, you cut that piece, you reduce it to 5 inches, and you cut it in 5, each piece of 1 inch, and then you get the smaller piece, and again you reduce it all the way to 5 inches, and you cut it in 5. Now, with the, and make sure that your white area stays very straight. Now, what you do with the smaller pieces, you pinch the red part of the cylinder so that you kind of flatten it, but you need to be pinching only the red part. Don't grab the white in the process. And be careful because they will have the tendency to lengthen as you do this. Make sure that you kind of squish them back together. And so you have the white kind of like a bump, and then the sides that are red, only on the red side of the gradient, that are pinched flat. And you need to pinch them fairly flat, and the whole thing, flatten it a little bit, but those sides have to be really, really, really flat. Then with the bigger part, I am going to cut them in 5 pieces, and it's true, these will be only half an inch tall, but as I am deforming them, I will lengthen them. The difference in deforming them from the other one is that you pinch only on one side. You kind of keep the other side round and whole. You don't pinch it flat. You try to keep it as round and as whole as possible. While on one side you flatten that red exactly like you did on the smaller pieces. And see, you can get 1 inch length pieces out of them. Now, from the smallest ones, choose whichever is the flattest, because that one you will have to roll it out on itself. So grab one of the ends that are flattened and start rolling it in. And then once you roll that in, you'll start arranging the other ones that are the petals around that middle. Now remember how the rose petals kind of wrap on each other? Make sure that you take that into consideration. So whenever you place one, place it like a couple millimeters before the other one ended. And make sure that you do not trap any air. In case you happen to turn that around and get distracted and that you don't know where you are, just look at the end of the cane and you'll be able to see which is the next one that you need to overlap, because each and every one of these have to overlap a little bit. Not a lot, just 2 or 3 millimeters, but they need to overlap to give that realistic feeling. Once you get to the third or the fourth, get the back of your rigid blade and make a little bit of an indent in the middle of the white bump. And you don't have to make an indent in all of them. And the same as when you pinch them, you don't have to make them all looking exactly the same. On the contrary, a little bit of diversity is good. But essentially, that's all it is to it. When you wrap them, make sure that you overlap the previous one and make that indent on the top of the white bump for, it's not white, it's pink at this point, for most of them. And if you lose your track and you don't know which of them comes next, just look at the end of the cane and you will see which direction they overlap. Only on the bigger one you'll have to use something a little bit thicker than the base of the blade to make those indentations. Now, when you get to the bigger one, you will kind of have to go a little bit backwards. That is, you will place only the flattened part on the previous one, overlapping the previous one, and not the flattened part, I'm sorry, the round flat part overlapping the previous one. And see, you can see which of them it is and put the round part overlapping the previous one. And then make sure that you flatten well the other part. And the same. no air pockets, and overlap the next one again with the round part over the overlapping the previous one. And it's easy to manipulate them if they are not long enough or anything. You just pull on them a little bit and everything is just fine. And don't bother about the indentations until you're done with all of them. Here I'm just using one of those Mod Podge scrapers to do the indentations on these ones, but they are very important because they give one more realistic touch to the cane, to the way the rose looks. And as I said, you can do this with any kind of colors. Just be careful when you do it with very light colors. And once you are done with the last one, it's fine again if it doesn't go all the way to the very first big one that you put. That is normal. Now make sure that you make your indentations. You don't even have to make them all in length. You can make a few in a diagonal. And don't go too deep, maybe about 1 millimeter, because the petals are not frayed. They are just a little bit not perfectly even at the edge. Now make little sausages and cover up all those crevices that are left between the last bigger pieces that are thicker on one end, and also look if any of the indentations need a little bit of covering, so when you wrap the whole cane in white, you will not have you know, an uneven area. So cover up really good using these little sausages, snakes, however you want to call them, wherever there is an indentation in the cane, be it from the petal or be it from the indentation you made with the whatever tool you chose to do it with. And once you have done that, squeeze it just a little bit, and you can roll it a little bit, and then just plain wrap it in white on the thickest setting. There's no need to put a thicker than that. I mean, it's enough, and just plain wrap it like you would any cane. Yeah, I'm taking the width so I know. um, excuse me. So once you've done that, you're pretty much done with the cane. So you can see it's not very difficult to make. It's a fairly easy cane, and you will see I will leave it for a couple minutes to rest so it wouldn't get too deformed when I cut it, because it's still all hot and soft. Yeah, I'm too lazy to go get more white, so I'm just going to make one stripe to cover up that uh, area that it didn't reach. But that's fine. I mean, I'm covering it up. Um, so yeah, make sure that you squeeze it in an hourglass pattern. Again, the normal squeezing of a round cane, so you can push out any potential air bubbles, and then just roll it just a little bit, and there you are. I'm going to leave it for 2 minutes, and then we'll see the test of truth. Let's see how the rose cane looks like. Okay, that's not a good slice. There we go. Wait for a second, let for me to focus the camera, and you'll be able to see this beauty. See, it's a very quick, very simple, but very realistic looking rose cane.